This is the Sports Content Gameplan, the podcast where we go behind the scenes with the creators shaping how we see sports today. I'm your host, Isaac Solina, and each week I have conversations with the people behind the videos, photos, stories, and strategies that brings the game to life. We talk creativity, storytelling, and the real work that happens behind every highlight. In today's episode, I am joined by sports photographer Hannah Palpant. We go deep into sports photography and content creation, the power in networking, knowing your why, showcasing the humans behind the jerseys, and fulfilling the dream of working at an NFL game, and much more. Let's get into it. Hannah, welcome to the Game Plan.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and to talk about sports photography.
I'm excited too, and thank you so much for joining. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Nothing too crazy. Early morning, but doing very well today.
Let's start with a few quick questions to begin with. So, do you have a favorite channel?
I would say I tend to just use Instagram. In a sense, that's kind of the main platform source of networking use of my business that I use. I have not spent a ton of time using YouTube or TikTok or just not a ton of other channels. I'm sure I should, but Instagram has kind of been the place where that has led me to a lot of opportunities. So I just kind of am honing into that for a bit for now.
And do you have a favorite type of content?
I would say that it varies. Of course, as a photographer, I take a lot of pictures, but I love to film. I love to video stuff, and although I may be stronger as a photographer, I'd love to get better as a videographer. And so I may not post as many videos, but I try to create videos and edit them and post those. And I do enjoy making videos. And then also just even simple reels. I love just kind of filming simple reels, just explaining how I do things, showing people what I'm doing. So that doesn't actually tell you exactly what I love, because I think there's little bits of each one that I enjoy. I think photos are obviously much easier and easy to post, easy to put up. But I do enjoy getting on and talking on videos and teaching little things here and there. So I enjoy little bits of everything.
That's good. And do you have any creator that you are inspired by?
Yes, I would say there are quite a few different people that I have looked up to over the last 4 years since I've really gone into sports, the world of sports as a photographer. And that list has just gotten bigger and bigger as I've been able to get to know people. One of which, her name is Peyton. She is very much involved in the world of American football, and she has been asked, I've seen a lot of her work. She's been asked to do quite a few different, very large events, but she is one of the most talented videographers I've ever seen. The way she colors it. And I've gotten to talk to her briefly, and she's so kind. And so it's really cool getting to watch her and talk to her a bit. There are quite a few, but another group that I have watched and listened to is the 505 podcast. There's a couple guys. They had three. There's, I think, two guys currently in the podcast, but one of them used to shoot for a professional basketball team in the States, and another guy used to do concerts at a very professional level. And what I loved is that throughout their podcast, they would give tips and just kind of share things that they wish they had known when they started out, or things that they're learning at the moment. They'll bring on different people who are at the top of their game. And I even got to chat with with one of the guys for a bit, and they have just been able to help a lot of young photographers. So I mean, obviously they themselves have their own Instagrams, but they have like 505 podcasts. It's very helpful and um super eager to just watch younger and newer photographers, videographers, creatives grow and just opening their arms to them.
Do you have any favorite DM that you have received?
A favorite DM that I've gotten, maybe the two that just are very big moments that let me or took me to a bigger position. One was when, because I lived in the US, I focused and I grew up around American football. That is the main sport that I watched growing up. I have favorite teams. I dreamed of being on the field to taking photos someday. And I had worked really hard on high school levels, college level sports, and then I just decided, I know I'm not the best in this industry, but I'm going to DM professional NFL American football players and just offer to help, offer to see if I could do any work for free. And I had DM'd maybe 100 athletes and one responded. And I remember when I saw the DM, I threw my phone because I could not believe that I had gotten a message from an NFL player. I was like, okay, is this really happening? And that there were definitely some conversations. He was eager to have me come work with him, and then that led to another opportunity to actually go shoot on an NFL field, and it was just the coolest thing ever. And I will say, I think I've gotten quite a few very amazing DMs getting to meet and connect with some of the greatest content creators, videographers, photographers all across the world. So it would take too long to go through a lot of the ones because I think it's just very cool all around. But there was another one, as I've gotten into hoping to pursue Formula One, I reached out late summer. So I would say maybe July, August, so summertime. I reached out and DM'd some different Formula drivers, Formula 4, Formula E, Formula 3, Formula 2, and just offered again, would they want anyone to just come shoot for them? I did not know what was allowed. I didn't know what I would be allowed to do. And again, a Formula 3 driver responded. And I was like, what? I didn't feel like I was anyone. I did not have any motorsport content on my social media. So I was like, I didn't think much would happen. But he said, yeah, come shoot with me. So and of course, a lot of this is offering for free because I know how important it is to prove yourself. And if they don't know who you are, it's to me, I'm like, I need to just say, hey, can I do this so that I can prove myself? And then if something comes from that, then we can talk about, possible ways of how I can get paid in this industry. But I have zero motorsport experience. And so I was like, I'm just going to offer for free. I have the extra money. I save money throughout my work to do things like this. Packed up my bags and flew to Italy and took photos for him at the Italian Grand Prix that he was driving at. And that opened up a ton of doors, which I'm trying to grab them as I go. But those two, I think, have been the biggest kind of proving points to myself also that somebody's watching and that I can do this. And so I might as well just try because obviously I'm DMing hundreds of people, but all you need is one yes. So that's, I would say, the two that have just helped give me confidence and also open doors to very cool opportunities.
That's amazing. I guess we will come into these topics later also, how to get started. So the last one is also, would you describe your own content or your own photography?
I would describe my content in one end, the type of photos that I try to take. I aim for storytelling, which when you are filming videos, that tends to be a little not necessarily easy to do a good story, but you're watching something unfold. In photos, it's harder to really capture a story that's happening because it's one moment. And something I had noticed watching a lot of different photographers, especially ones who have been doing this for 30 years, and they've kind of gotten into this place where they are capturing the action, which is great because you want to see the action, but that's about it. And for me, my goal was to capture everything in between the action. So of course, I want to capture the action, but I also wanted to capture the moments before the game or before the race when when they're seeing their family, having a very special moment before, or even when they're putting their helmets on or tying their cleats up. There's some very still moments where they're just there and nothing's happening. It's kind of silences everything that's happening around them. And then you capture the moments right before they start going, whatever national anthem is happening, there's a lot of emotion. That's a very quiet emotion that's happening during that moment. And then you have the actual action, but then you also have the end where you have the losing team. Very emotional, if they, even often tears, because of course they're very passionate about it. So you capture these moments of intense grief where they're just hurt if they, especially if it's an important event, important game. And then you also have the winning team when they're just losing their mind, and it's just very special. And then you have the moments where they're again going back to their family, and you see this entire story of what they went through, but you're capturing it in one moment. And that's what I love to do. So what I try to post is, of course, some fun action, but also some very still moments that you can hopefully, if I do it correctly, you can look at it and just say, I know what's happening. Like that's a story. So that's something I also love doing, and also trying to learn how to be a bit artistic with it and having fun with it. I love to edit. I've seen some photographers who, depending on what they're asked to do as a job, though, of course, is they will take pictures, keep it action, and do very little edits to it, which it is what it is. I love to keep the colors the same, but make it more crisp, clean, like brighten some of the colors, make it pop a little bit. I enjoy doing that. And so, regarding photography, that is something I care about deeply. And also, capturing these athletes, whether female or male, just like capturing them in a honorable way too, like capturing them in a way where they really are human beings. This could be a very long topic, but I know that sometimes fans can easily see athletes as the number on their back, or they're on the court, they're on the field, they're on the track, and that's just who they are, and they forget that they have lives. They're real people. This is just another dream. Like, I have a dream to be a photographer, they have a dream to be a race car driver, and I know that a picture does not, of course, perfectly capture who they are as a person, but maybe I can give a little bit of insight to them being a human being. So that's why I love telling that story, because I think it's really important for fans or people on the outside to see, oh, that they have emotion, but they're a real person, they have a family, they, like, sure, this might be a good majority of their life, but they're just another person. That's something that's very important to me, to remember to capture that. It's not about making money for me. although it is a dream to be able to make a living off of this, but it's more about being able to tell a true story, a good, noble, true story about who these athletes are.
I think that's a very important topic to be like you say, everybody is human beings. So I think it's important also in sports when athletes are often scrutinized or, you know, criticized, or just like you say, they are human beings also. And like you mentioned, it was 4 years ago, I think you mentioned, that you started getting into the sports photography world. So how and why did you want to get into this field?
I decided to pick up a camera about a little over 6 years ago, but I started actually in food photography, and I love to cook, I love to bake, and so, which is very different than what I do now. But I did that to a level where I was able to do stuff for cookbooks for people, for magazines, websites, just things like that. And I loved it. And then I started doing, weddings and family pictures and just pictures for people where whatever they needed, businesses and stuff. And I enjoyed it. I mean, anytime I can work with people, I love it. But I grew up playing sports. I grew up playing basketball and volleyball, and I grew up watching American football, NFL with my dad. And I never really thought that I could be good enough to do something like that. Because you mean I'd see pictures and I'm like, oh, these guys are pros. Like, I cannot do this. But I decided, so about 2 years into it, my practice of learning how to take pictures. My sister was playing basketball for her varsity high school team, and I thought, well, there's zero expectations. No one is expecting my pictures. I'll go take pictures and videos of her and her team for fun. And then I had sweet moms. I think moms are always just so overly kind, but they were like, "You are so good at this." And I was like, "I don't think I am, but thank you." But the thing is, one of those moms had a connection with a very, like, one of the best college basketball teams in that we actually live near. And I was like, "I don't think I'm that good," but she said, "We're gonna get you involved with this." And I was like, "Okay." I was doubting myself, but I do think, as most creatives, we all kind of are like, am I really that good? We kind of see the mistakes in everything we do. So she ended up connecting me with someone, and I just started asking questions because I was like, I kind of love this. I mean, I'm only doing it at a very small level, but if I could do this at a at some level, I love sports. I love working with athletes. I was I'm not good enough to continue doing it after high school, so I was like, maybe there's a way for me to be involved in it. So then when I was able to connect with people at higher levels, they doors opened, and there were certain people that just gave me opportunities that I still sitting here like, I don't know how that happened, but I guess there was a door. So I talked to a guy who did a college American football team, and he said, I was just asking him, like, hey, how did you get here? What can I do to get better? And he said, well, answered a few questions, said, would you want to join us on Saturday? And I was like, what? Like, I didn't even ask to join. He just said, here. And that doesn't always happen, of course. But I said, I was like, yes, of course, I will be there. And then I was able to get more content on to my portfolio. And then people were saying, Hannah, you're actually good at this. I was like, am I good at this? So I think having people around me to encourage me and say, you have something here. You should see if you can get better at it. I was like, "Why not?" It's I don't know, I didn't know anyone in my area that was doing this, especially any women. I was like, "I feel crazy for doing this." And so I was like, okay, I'll just go for it. If worse comes to worse, I don't end up doing this for very long, that's fine. And then that ended up leading to opportunities with different college sports. And so I just kind of did that and kept practicing, kept working at my skills. So I was like, I really, if this is something I want serious, I have to put everything into it. Like I need to, so I left my job and I was like, I'm doing this full time. I got a nicer camera. I saved up for a nicer camera. I DM'd so many people to just ask them, how did you do this? How did you edit this? How did you, like, can I talk to you? Can I do a call with you? And I did that I still do that actually, and then that led to doing stuff for the NFL. Then I fell in love with, Formula One, and I've just done a ton of different sports. So all in all, like, I just found having people around me that I would say believed in me. They saw what I had and just said, go for it. Otherwise, I don't think I would have done this. And that has led to opportunities, one that I never thought would happen, at least within the first 5 or 10 years. I was like, but then they happened in the first like 2 years. And I said, well, maybe I can do something with this. I don't wanna waste this opportunity. So I'm going to go for it. And then, which has now led me to moving to be in England now. And although I'm not sure how long I will live here, I want to just make the most of it and meet as many people as I can and just try things out. They won't all work, but I'm kind of in a space where I just want to try things, enjoy the process, expect to fail, and then learn from it and try again. So I would say that is a short, brief overlook on what got me into this and why I love it.
And I love that. And I also resonate with a lot of what you're saying with like imposter syndrome or just like, am I good enough? And then each time you take on something new and you push through the fear, and then you start having, like you mentioned, you've been traveling for work. Like for me also, I've been traveling to so many different places just to work in this field in sports and in social media and everything. So it's very cool. And you mentioned 4 years in, you already, like when I scroll your feed, I can see you already work, like you mentioned, in so many different sports. So that's really cool. So do you have a favorite one?
I think there's levels to this. I love basketball. I love basketball, one, because you're always inside, and so there's never worry about weather being bad. And I grew up playing basketball, so I know it's the sport I know the best, and I enjoy being on the sidelines. You're right there in the action happening, and so it can be very exciting, and there's always something happening. So I think basketball may be it's one of my favorites in that aspect. I love American football because I grew up watching it, and there's a lot of cool things that you can capture in it. However, you're not always right there in the action, and if you are right there in front of the action, you might get hit because I have almost gotten run over by an athlete once or twice. So you have to be very like aware, which I think that might be any sport if they're like running around. But I do enjoy football. It's just I don't know. I think it depends on the moment and what opportunity and who's playing will change whether I like football or basketball more. When it comes to motorsports, I think I have this it's a newer love for me, and so I have less to say on it. However, that's why I've moved, and so of course I love it, and it's on the top of my head right now. It's what I'm aiming for. It's what I'm kind of networking for. So I am excited for that one, but I've not done very much of it. So I would say yes, it's on the top of my list, but I think I need to experience a little more to really know whether it's what I love. But I've also tried not every sport, but a lot of different sports, from tennis to volleyball to golf to soccer. I've even done rugby. I've done a lot of different randoms, a little like niche sports. But I think what's also fun is trying these like different sports that I've never even thought about capturing. I think it really, I guess also track and that, but I would say it really comes down to the athletes I'm shooting. I think there, of course, are fun, exciting sports with a lot of action, a lot of just anticipation of what's happening. And then there's slower sports like golf, where a lot less action, but of course, anticipation. But I think what I have found is, as someone who loves people, I think it comes down to who am I shooting for? Who am I capturing? So if it is I've made a video for a friend of mine who plays golf. And that was, golf may not be the most exciting sport to me personally. Being able to capture that was just one of the coolest things because I cared about him as a friend. Or, as I got to know athletes, basketball players, I got to know some of these girls at a very like top college level. Some of them are pro basketball players now, and just creating a friendship with them makes me want to work with them, and I care about them. So I think it really comes down to if I've created a friendship, a relationship with them, I will be like, whatever sport you do, you call me, I'm there. And I think that might be the biggest part of what I want to do someday, is just work for individual athletes or people that I know, because I'm like, hey, I know you. I know who you are as a person. I would like to capture it and show people who you are to the best of my ability, of course. Which, again, doesn't really answer your question of which one's my favorite. But so if I would say, just in general, F1, motorsports, I'm happy to try other motorsport events, races. But F1, basketball, American football, those are like my top three. And then second tier, it's who are the athletes? Who am I shooting for?
I also love basketball. I've been playing basketball my whole life and mostly worked in basketball also. So I agree on that one. But I also think, like, when I think about working in different sports, or like if I see different sports and like you do work in different arenas or sports, what is the hardest things or the biggest challenges going between arenas or sports, or what are the challenges?
Yeah, that is a great question. I would say it's switching your mind to understand the speed of the sport, because that is a huge difference. Like, sure, there may be some sports that are like, oh, that's kind of similar. So you can get an idea of the speed or what's happening, but pretty much none are real. Like, you compare basketball to football. I remember I did football for first. No, I did basketball first. But I think when I did college level American football, it's sure there's a lot of action, but it's kind of slow in a sense, because they're in the middle of this field and you're not even close. And then they're doing one play at a time. Sure, one play might get them to the other side of the field, and but like they do it one thing at a time, because they always do the play, they stop, they restart, then they do another play. And it's not as fast as, like, let's say basketball, where basketball, which, as you know, like, unless they do a timeout, there's no stopping. They're just back and forth, and you don't know if there's going to be a steal. They're going to rush back. You don't have time to set your camera down. You have to be ready for when they come back. And I remember, of course, doing a high school level basketball, it's very different than doing a college, really pro level basketball. So when I did the college level basketball for the first time, I just remember being like, this is way faster. I know the sport, but I'm like, this is nothing like American football. And so I think and then even, I haven't quite done F1 yet, but I watch these guys and I watch where they stand, and you watch these cars and you have to, like, it's slower because, they go around, but then as soon as the car's coming, they have to be ready and you have to anticipate. So I think that's another thing is if you don't know the sport very well, it's going to be hard to capture these sports. And that's helpful for me because I grew up in this athletic world. I know most sports. And so it helps kind of, I understand that anticipation for basketball. You just don't know who he's going to throw the ball to. You kind of have to watch him kind of guess and then put the camera there because you want to make sure you catch it perfectly so you can catch a shot of him shooting the ball. Or when the car's coming around the corner, you have to anticipate when it's happening, otherwise the car's gone. Like you won't see the car. So I think the hardest part is just switching your head between sports, knowing what you're going into and who you're shooting, because all those people are different, and then anticipating, because anticipation in golf is different than anticipation in F1. So I think that would probably be the hardest thing to do between sports.
For me, I never really I actually never been to an NFL game or never worked at an NFL game. So what is special about working or shooting at an NFL game?
What is so special for me, shooting NFL would be, I think genuinely it's just growing up watching it on TV my entire life. I watched these teams. I loved watching them with my dad, and I, of course, never thought I'd even ever be on a field. I was like, there's no way. These guys are pros. I would never make it on a field. And so when I got to do it, one, they are ginormous. And obviously, I haven't been to the biggest. I know there are bigger, I know there's bigger stadiums out there, but I think in my head, I had been doing high school football and then college football, which I know there are some huge college football stadiums that I haven't been to. But then you get to NFL, for me, my brain was like, this place is giant. And so you feel so small when you're just walking on the field because there's like tons of people everywhere. And then one of the fields that I'm on for the Seahawks, it's the loudest NFL stadium. It's the loudest, if not one of the loudest. And so when all of the fans are cheering, you cannot hear yourself think. And especially when all the sound kind of comes down on top of you, it's so loud, but it's amazing. It's like the coolest feeling ever. And then you're just in there and you're watching these athletes. Like, sure, a lot of the ones I grew up with aren't playing anymore, but there are still some athletes where you're like, I remember you, like I know you on TV, and now I'm standing in front of you, which is just mind blowing. I'm like, they're a real person. What the heck? And then so just being there, I think it's just more for me as just someone who's always loved NFL. So it was very cool. And the sound is incredible. And just watching these guys, one, they're also huge. Like, I am not very tall. And so when you see them on TV, they're like, oh, they're just little guys on the TV. But then, of course, when you're in person, I'm like half their size. And I'm like, oh my, I am very small. And I really hope I don't get run over by one of them, which did happen once, where actually a couple times, but there's one time where you're behind the camera, you're wanting to capture a moment, but sometimes you're focused on one thing, and then I look up and then one of the guys is just full speed trying to stop, but like running right at me, and I was like, oh shoot. So I just had to step over, and he ran right through, and I was like, that could have been real bad. So I think there's a lot of excitement, a lot of just love for the game that I grew up with, and also the people. I think I've just been able to meet a lot of cool photographers on the field that are just incredible, so kind, and they're always so excited. I've met some people that I've looked up to where I'm like, hi, I'm a huge fan, these different photographers on the field, like, your stuff is amazing. And then they're just so kind and just talking to me. And of course, you can't talk too much while the game is happening, but it's always fun to connect afterwards and chat with them. So I think there's just a lot I love about it. And especially just as someone who's grown up always loving it, it's been very special to me.
You mentioned before this that you had a favorite NFL game, the Seahawks, between the Seahawks versus the 49ers. So what was so special working or shooting that game?
last season, I got to do that was my first season ever shooting NFL. The Seahawks, for everyone who knows or loves the Seahawks, the 49ers are our rivals. So we always want to beat them. It's very important to us. And I that has been that way since I was a kid. So it's always, if you love the Seahawks, you are not allowed to like the 49ers. And I remember getting to go to that game. Well, one, hearing that I was allowed to go to the game, I was like, I am going. Like, this is going to be so cool. Getting to shoot rivals, that was crazy. And then the Seahawks won, which was also amazing. And I also got to take my dad to that game. And my dad, my dad is not only the one I watched NFL growing up with, but he's also genuinely, he's like my biggest fan, which is just, it's so, I know it doesn't always happen, but it's the coolest thing to know that my dad, he's always like, Hannah, you got this. You got to go for it. And when I told him about these opportunities to shoot for the NFL, he was like, Hannah, this is the coolest thing ever. And he came to the NFL game with me, sat at the very, very tippy top nosebleed seats, and watched me. He watched the game, but he was like looking for me. He was like watching me, and he was just, I think there's just something about seeing how proud he was of me that was like, yes, I'm here, I'm doing this, and my dad's here with me. And it was just one of the coolest things and very special to share that with him. And also, the weather was perfect, which you don't always get perfect weather with sports that are outside. Sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's snowing, but thankfully the sun was perfect, and also the color. I'm a huge fan, even though I'm not a 49ers fan. I love taking pictures of red, like red jerseys, red. Just the color red is so cool. And so I loved editing afterwards because I thought the colors of the blue and green Seahawks versus the red, I was like, these look so cool. So I think there was just a mix of how just special that game was to me, not only winning, but also just really, I think just sharing that with my dad was super, super special to me.
Amazing. You mentioned already, like when you wanted to start getting into this field, how you really like put your mind to it and put the dedication towards it. Because I wanted also to get into, like, you already touched on some things, but a lot of photographers want to start shooting sports, but it can be a struggle to get on the sidelines. So I've asked you for your top 3 plays to really like to start shooting sports or get into this field or this industry. So let's start by those, and then we can continue discuss them. So what are your top 3 plays for getting onto the fields?
It's what's really fun that I've really enjoyed is wanting to not only capture and work with athletes, but also teach. I love helping young photographers, or just no matter how old they are, just new photographers. I love helping new photographers, giving them tips, things that I just didn't know when I was starting out. And so what's really cool is as I post videos or post things that just are like, here's a little tip, I have gotten a lot of newer photographers just asking for advice, and it's really fun getting to kind of just help them or answer questions. Obviously, I don't know everything, but I can give them little tips here and there. Often I will get new photographers just saying, how do I start? And it's so simple. It is so simple, but I remember feeling so stuck here. And I think there's just this big hill of being like, how do I just get started? The thing is you just need to go take pictures. I know it is so simple. It's like the silliest little thing. It's like, well, no, duh. But the problem is that people are like, I don't have a pro team to take pictures of. I don't have an opportunity. So how do I get started? So the thing is one, if you have no teams to take pictures, there you have your friends. Like, literally start at the base level. One, use whatever camera you have. You do not need the nicest camera to start out with. Maybe eventually when you're making money off of this, yes. But you're not there yet. You're at the beginning. So, you're talking to these new photographers. You're like, take what you have. It could be a phone for all I care. It does not need you. And then there's, cheap cameras on Amazon. Order a cheap camera. It's okay if it's not the nicest. And then, so all you need, get the camera. Part of it, though, is having a drive and love for it, because if you're expecting all these opportunities to come easy, you're not in the right end. Like, you're not going to make it very far, because a lot of, you talk to anyone who's been doing this for a decade, they're probably still working hard and they're getting a lot more opportunities now, but there is rarely you get spoon-fed unless you happen to be born into a top level opportunity, but that doesn't happen very often. As like for me, I had zero connection. So it's like, don't expect to be spoon-fed opportunities. What you have to do is you have to start at the bottom. You have to work and, save up a little, like couple $100 to buy a little cheap camera and go take your friends out to a basketball court outside, a field, and just learn your camera inside and out. Figure out how to capture action, because action, like sports, is so different than a family picture where you pose them, make them all nice, don't move. All right, 1 second, take the photo. This is very different than trying to say, can you capture a touchdown or a basketball shot or capture a car driving past? They are not the same. So what you have to do is just go shoot, go take pictures. And I would tell kids, take pictures every day if you can. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe start simple. Take a picture of your dog running around. Like, it's not hard. Next, what you would do is, I think social media has been one of the biggest things for me in my growth, is having relationships and opportunities and networking through Instagram. Really, like, I know there's TikTok you can invest in and YouTube, which are really great, but my opportunities have honestly all come through Instagram. So I would say, Instagram, once you start taking pictures, post every day. And, it can be really scary when you're posting, because it's kind of putting yourself out there, being like, here, hate me or love me. This is who I am. And it's awful, especially at the beginning. You're like, this sucks. And even now, I think there are some things I take, which I'm sure every photographer, videographer can relate to, where you're like, this sucks. I do not want people to see this, but that is how you grow. You got to make yourself vulnerable, expect somebody to not like it. But then how are you going to be able to push yourself to learn or grow better if you're not putting yourself out there? So I tell kids, which I actually did the same exact thing, is you post every single day for 30 days. Your photo at that 30-day mark is going to be miles better than that day one picture. And it's just because you got better. So that is like, you start with just go take the photos, keep it simple, take pictures of your friends. Then you post, you take pictures, post it, become vulnerable. Using Instagram, I will say this might be more than 3 tips, but I'll try to keep it quick. But
you can do more if you want.
On Instagram, that another key thing that, if you want to use this as a business tool, you need to utilize DMing people and networking and growing your social page, because unfortunately, you don't always want it necessarily about how many followers you have. However, if you are able to grow your page, more people will notice you and more clients will want to hire you. So I think there is followers are not what matter as much. Your work matters more. You want to make sure you have good quality content. However, how can you do that in a way that grows your work and gets the attention so that you can get clients? However, so that's why, keep posting, keep growing, but also DM people. I spent hours, I shouldn't say stalking. I spent hours finding people who's taking pictures for the Seahawks. And it's hard because these teams do not tag their photographers. So you're like digging into being like, once you find one photographer, then you see who is this photographer following. You go find all those photographers, see who they're following, then you follow all of them. And then that's how you kind of get into this web of like, okay, now I know who the photographers are or who the videographers are. And so I then DM'd them and just said, hey, I have a question. How did you do this? One thing I will just, as a little start like a little note, is one thing I've noticed is that some new photographers who have maybe a small, not very little experience, will go on and DM, they've DM'd me, or I've seen, talk to other photographers. Their first DM is asking for something in a sense where they're like, can you get me on the field? So this is more of an advice to new photographers who want to grow. The most important thing is if you want opportunities, you need to create relationships with people and get to know them. And people aren't just going to let you do something unless they trust you, unless they know who you are as a person. And so if your immediate DM is, hey, can you get me on the Seahawks field? One, I probably won't answer. Of course, I try to answer everyone. And so I probably will just be like, I'm sorry, no. Because I don't know who you are. I don't know what your goals are. I look at your content. Sure, I started at nowhere. I started at the bottom. But like, you have to understand the best way to DM photographers who have been doing this for a while is one, asking for little bits of advice. Hey, how can I do this? Which that is the majority of the messages I get, which is just so cool. And I'm like, awesome, your stuff is great. Here's something you could do. Or, comment on their stuff like, hey, your work was so good here. And just DM slowly. And that's how you create a real relationship with someone and kind of figure out who do you want to imitate? Who do you want to work with? Who do you want to be like someday? Don't just try to use people because sure, there are people in this industry that they just climb the ladder as doing whatever they can. I hope to never be like that. I don't admire that. And often I don't see that working very well. Sometimes it works, but it doesn't often last long because if you can create a very good relationship with people and just really know that there's space for everyone, okay? Like, sure, we might be working and fighting for a similar position, but like the amount of athletes that are in this world, we're fine. Like, there's space for everyone. Let's just help each other out. And I think if you can come in with that mindset to the, new photographers coming in with this mindset and just saying, how can I help? How can I be of service? How can I grow? Having that mindset of just, how can I become better without trying to use people? That is, I think once you DM, have that mindset, that is one of the biggest things that could lead to a lot of places. And, not everyone can respond, but they also have jobs. I don't have response from everyone, but that's because they're busy with their lives. But, that's why you DM everyone. You just need a few responses. So I think that would be the third. All right, so what I said is like, just go take pictures. Doesn't matter what it is. Go take photos. Then number 2, post every day. Make yourself vulnerable. Grow. Sure, you can go back and later and delete things, but you have to start somewhere. And then third, DM with a mindset of growth. So I think those would be my three very large tips for someone who's just jumping in for the first time.
That's very good advice. And I also, if I think back to the first things you said when we started, like you DM'd hundreds of people, like you mentioned. And I think for people to take that action, that can be like a big step. And some people really maybe don't want to do the grind and really do those things because it's a big thing to do, like the rejection or not getting answers. But like you mentioned also, like if you just get the one answer, it can change everything. So just like the grind of actually doing those things is what's going to take you to the next level. Like you yourself are the example of this. So I think it's very good advice. It is a grind working in sports content, sports photography. Can you name like one thing that most people don't know about the grind of working in sports?
There's quite a few things that you don't realize going, if you're choosing this, they don't think this is part of it. One of which is the discipline, like self-discipline. I mean, if this is the industry you want to get into, unless you are working for a team and you have like a normal job and someone is in charge of you telling you what to do, if you're a freelancer, you have to be in charge of your own schedule. So if you don't tell yourself you have to get up and do something, well, it's not going to happen and you will not have success in this. So I think having that self-drive is often very hard because you're like, well, this is not going anywhere. Why would I do this? And often I've had a lot of those moments, a lot. And it's been really helpful surrounding myself with people that, one, I know will be honest with me, I keep a small circle of people I go to for advice. One, they'll be honest with me, but also they just say, Hannah, you are good at this. Because there are so many moments I look at people, their work, and I'm like, nope, I am not good, But then you have to remember, where did I start? And I am loads better than where I began. That's just how growth works, but you can't compare yourself to someone who's done this for a decade or 2 decades. I haven't done it for even like I haven't even done it for 5 years yet. So why am I comparing myself to someone who's done it a decade long? And so I think just finding that self-drive is so hard. But this is another thing, small tip, which has helped me with my finding that drive is before you start, you need to know why you're doing it. What is your why? Because often, I don't know what everyone's motives are when they become sports photographer, but I can imagine as, like for myself, oh, it's just cool. It's cool. It's you get to work, if you get really good, you get to work with professional athletes and you're around famous people. Oh my goodness, it's so cool. It's so cool. Or, maybe I can make a lot of money doing this. I want to make a lot of money. One, if your mindset is I'm going to make a lot of money, it's not going to happen very fast, especially in sports. Maybe over time you can get to that level, but it is not a fast money maker. But the other thing is, it's just, if your mindset, oh, this is cool, I think this is so cool, your drive is going to go by really fast. Like, that is not motivation enough to get up every day and DM someone, answer emails, or go to a high school game. Sure, high school games can be a lot of fun, but if you're thinking, I just want to be at the NFL, I just want to be at the NFL just because it's cool, you're going to get bored real fast. I think and of course, each person can have a different motivation. And if it works, that's why and it might change over the years. I think one of my motivations currently, which is helping me do this, is I want to help capture as I stated earlier, I want to help capture true and beautiful stories for professional athletes. And that is my dream, to work with athletes at the Olympics someday. That would be like the coolest. It's cool, but I have a reason behind it, like I want to, there's some athletes that you watch and you're like, that they have a cool story. They have something to share with the world. If I could get to that top tier level of working with top tier athletes, but do it because I want to share their stories well and beautifully. And as human beings, especially, I will work with guys and girls, but I think there's something about also working as a woman, as a female, like working with female athletes is just very special to me, because there's also something about female photographers capturing a woman, female athlete as a woman, as a human being. And I think if I could do that, that is a motivation for me. I have a few different motivations, but that is one huge one of just, I would like to be, when someone wants, especially like a famous top tier female athlete, they're like, I want Hannah. That would be special to me, but I know I'm going to have to work for it. Like, I'm not even close to being there yet. Sure, I have some connections, but I'm not there yet. And so finding that motivation is hard. But if you find it, that can help drive you. So there's quite a few different things that are difficult to jump into for that have that drive, because you're just pushing yourself to do it. And I think that may be one of the biggest hurdles, because if you can get over that hurdle, pretty much you could do anything. If you can get into that, if you have motivation, I mean, you got the world. You go for it. And sure, and I have expectations that people will say no to you and things will not work out. People won't like your work. But if you're okay with that, because not everyone's going to like my work. Not everyone's going to want to work with me. Of course, that makes me sad. I would love it if everyone did. But I also know that's not how it works. I'm not the best in the world. I have a lot to learn, but okay, you don't want to work with me, that's fine. I'll move on to my next project. I'll try to find something new. And if you can get past that, that's going to lead to a lot of opportunities. So I'd say that is probably the number one. There's of course more, but that is probably one of the biggest ones that people don't expect.
And it is a grind and it's fast paced and it's also ever changing a lot, like sports content, sports working in the sports world. So only in this 4 years, what for you do you think have changed the most working in sports content and sports photography?
I would say, you can see there's changes, whether it's how you yourself capture the photos, or, your edits change, or you learn new things, but then also just depending on who you're working with, those things change. The community changes, the photography world changes. I think when it comes to how I work, it's hard to say, because I can just, I look back and I'm like, it's really cool to see how I've changed. Sometimes you get kind of stuck in your hole, and then you start comparing what you're doing right now to someone who's better, and you're like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, this is horrible. But then you like, wait a second, look back at where I was 4 years ago. Okay, I did grow. I actually did do something. So I think in that sense, for change for myself, I have a growth in confidence. I, of course, will have moments of feeling out of place, I don't belong there. But there have been just a few little moments where someone asked me, I had a fairly well-known company ask me to shoot for them, and I think and they wanted to pay me. And I was like, I don't belong here. I'm not good enough to be paid to shoot content for this brand. But then I did it, and they were like, Hannah, we love your work, thank you. And I think in that moment I was able to find a confidence in myself, knowing my stuff is actually good. And sure, you have your friends always like, Hannah, you're so cool. Like, this is great. And I'm like, yeah, but then what is that? They're just being nice. And so I think my confidence has changed. I think there's still definitely, I totally know that I have a ways to grow. I have a lot to get better at, and different shots that I want to just work on a bit. But I also feel confident enough that I can do this. And if I just keep myself motivated. So I think in change, it's just my mindset has changed. When it comes to just being in this industry, I think it's harder to say out from my point of view, because I have not spent, a long period of time in any specific sport, because it's just grown so quickly. So I spent a year, high school level, which is very small, and it was not much that changes there. There's no one's asking you for anything. It's just for fun. And you just do it for the kids, and they love it. It's really fun taking photos for the kids, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, that photo is amazing." It's my favorite thing, seeing their faces just light up. And then you go to, collegiate level, and they're obviously just they're better, but I only spent, like, I never worked in that industry. I just would take photos at different games. And so my relationship with those folks, I don't know all the in-depth changes that are happening. I can only see them from the outside. And it does change that self. So like, people who would want to work with you, they might move on to doing something else, and then the new people might not want to work with you. I've had that experience before. And there's sometimes where you're like, I don't know why they just blocked me, because I was very nice when I asked them for something, and I will never know why they did, but maybe it's because they didn't want me taking their job, even though I told them I didn't have to work for them. I was just trying to be nice and helpful. So you just don't know who's gonna react, who's gonna respond well, who's not, who's gonna be too intimidated, which I don't know why they would, but like, people just respond differently. And you just have to be able to like have it bounce off. You can't take it personally. That's what I'm learning. It's like, don't take things personally. People will be mean. People will be like, you suck. You don't know what you're talking about. And I'll be like, yeah, I know. I pretend like I do. And then you have like the professional level sports, which again, I've never like officially worked in one like as an employee. I've only done it as freelance. And so I think I have this distant relationship to the in-depths of how things are happening and stuff. And there's a lot of freedom in that. I enjoy it because I'm not tied down to any sport. I can just work with anyone. And there's no like, oh, you're not allowed to do that, you're not allowed to do that, which I think it's really cool if you get to work for a team. It's just not something that I that's just not what I want to do. And maybe someday I'll do it, but I think I love having the freedom to work with all different types of all different athletes and go travel all over the world for everyone, and then getting to have the opportunity to shoot for different brands and whatnot. So all in all, I would say I have seen ways in which I have changed with my mindset. But when it comes to the industry itself, I don't know if I have a perfect say on how things have changed because I've not spent enough time. I'm only watching it from the outside.
And on the topic of future and your future, what's next for you and what do you want to do also in the future?
For my future, I think one of the biggest things that I have loved about how my mindset has changed is I have a lot has happened over the course of my life where I know that things can change so quickly. And I love to have a plan for my life, but I also am really okay with things just they just I'm gonna go for something, and I love to just try something, but like it might change. And I think that's so exciting is not knowing what our future holds and just like, hey, I'm gonna go for this. It may or may not happen. If it does, that's cool. If it doesn't, maybe something better. I don't know. I'm gonna go for it. So I think in a sense, I love having a job where I have zero idea what next year looks like. I have no idea. But when it comes to, of course, I have goals, I have dreams, things I'm working towards. And, currently, I just moved to England. I am in the process of networking with people all over this country, Europe area, just a new area of people. I spent a lot of time networking with people in the States, and so it's really cool to just see who's in this area. And I have a lot of free time. I have work, but like I have a lot of free time, which I have purposely made so that I can, head to London for a week. I'm gonna, meet up with some people there, network, connect, create relationships. And then I know there are people who live up north and just all over, just chatting and getting to know people. So that is kind of my one thing I'm doing now, and just also possibles. I'm open to trying new sports. I'm like, let's try some rugby, some cricket, some sports over here, and just trying new things. You know, I'm excited about that. And then also for Formula 1, that's one of my dreams is to take photos at one Formula 1 race. And I have some connections that I'm working with. However, I know that takes a lot, like there's a lot of work I have to do to get into it, and it's not easy getting into Formula 1. So I don't take that lightly. Like I have worked really hard to create these relationships with people, and now I'm going to continue to work hard because I have a lot of respect for those who are in Formula 1, and they are absolutely incredible. I look up to those people. Their work is beautiful. So I want to respect them and just do my best to get better at my work. And yeah, I put it down as one of my goals is I will take photos at a Formula 1 race this year. It's a little feels a little like unrealistic in my head, but you have to say it and you have to mean it and then you go for it. So that is like, all right, that is one of my goals. And then the other goal, which I kind of touched on earlier, is just I really, my long-term goal is to create relationships with athletes and to help them. I have relationships with some athletes right now, and they're very special to me. And if they called me up, I'd be there. I'd be there. So if I could find, a handful of athletes, the other dream is, of course, I never want to focus on the money side of things because genuinely the money is not very important to me. But I also have to make a living off of this. So I think what the dream would be is do I have enough money to take care of myself? Can I eat? Can I sleep? Can I have a place to live? If I can do that, I will drop everything to shoot for an athlete that I know. And I will, if I can someday work for an individual like on a professional, like professional track athlete who does Olympic level work, then I'm like, yeah, I will be there with you. I will walk through all this with you. I will be there. Or, a race car driver. I think that would be also super cool. So I think those are, my long-term goal. Working with individual athletes would be the dream. And then, year long goal is I will shoot at an F1 race this year. But other than that, I think continuing to network, create relationships, and just have fun through the process. That is one of the things, is just I want to enjoy this life that I'm living to the most that I can. And so just there are some ups and downs, but I want to just enjoy this process of maybe something will happen in between here and when I shoot my first F1 race, and it could be the coolest thing ever. So I just, take each moment, enjoy it. And I also love meeting people. So getting to talk to people, getting to have conversations like these and just chat and like even learn about other people and their stories is just, I love doing that. And so I think this new journey of living in England is very exciting. It's a little nerve-wracking living in a place I've never lived in before, but I think there's a lot that can happen that I'm very excited to see what I go to next.
Amen to that. And I also loved talking with you today, and to hear your insight and hear your passion also for this sports photography is really nice to hear and talk with you. My last question always on this pod is if you have a dream guest that you would like to hear their story on this pod. Can be anyone.
Someone that I think has a great story. She's one of my dear friends. So I already know I know her story, but I think it would be really like her perspective is super interesting. Is her name is Olga, and she's done a lot of different work. She's a freelancer with her husband, and she has done a lot of work in Formula One, but has also done a lot of different things. And she and her husband are figuring out, like, I mean, it's different when you are, I'm a single girl living on my own. I don't need to make that much money to to live off of. But when you're married, and then I'm sure when you have kids and like you name it, and then you also are living in a house or whatever, that adds up very quickly. And so, just talking to her, I bet would, hearing a perspective on how do you survive? And I'm sure you understand this being married, but like, how do you survive living really, like, you have to make a lot of money or just enough money to survive and have a decent life while also pursuing your dream. And I think her story is just super cool, and really she's just one of the sweetest people I've ever met. But I love her story, but I know there's a whole host of people that I would love to hear their stories. So I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. Just, creating a podcast where you can bring people on so that you can share it with everyone else. I think that is super cool. Honestly, one of my dreams is to do this. I just haven't had time yet, but I think it's a really cool idea. And I am genuinely so honored that you reached out to me, and I'm not sure who I can help, but like, if there are new photographers who have just dreams or goals and I can help just a little bit, that would be the coolest thing ever. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. So it's been really amazing talking to you and getting to know you and your story today. Thank you so much, Hannah, for today.
Yes, thank you.